Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome back to another this Stockholm Tech Meetup. I'm Tyler, your host, and we've got a very special Stockholm Tech Meetup for you this month with some awesome guests. We'll get to those in a minute, but before we do, we're going to jump into the news as we always do. And for everyone who's just joining us, you can let all of your friends know to join us as well if they go to live.sthlm.tech, stockholm.tech. You can go to stockholmtech.com, or you can go to our YouTube channel where this is streaming. And then wherever you go, you'll see a YouTube player that you see me in right now. If you click the YouTube logo and go into the YouTube page, there's a really good reason to do that so that you can join the chat where everyone's going to be talking, and for the people who are talking, I can put their comments into the live stream or into the video that you see. So I do encourage you to go to the YouTube live chat where you can chat with everybody there, and it's another additional fun part of the event for those who are watching live. So first up in the news, we go through the fundraisings as we always do, and there was no shortage this month. Swedish startup Alloverse lands 250K, which is cool, good for them. And Spotify founder, one of the co-founders, invests in Coffee Door for sending coffee capsule homes to your door. And then the Swedes make an ID for your feet. Caroline raises 7.5 million. For her startup, which it's been fun to watch that progress. And then Super Normal, a very cool new one that I was lucky to get in on the early beta on and very enjoy using. Just announced their fundraising from EQT Ventures for 2 million seed round. And then Carl, who does the OnePlus phone, which a lot of people don't know, that Carl's a Swede, and OnePlus is starting to boom as one of the major Android phones globally. I see them everywhere that I'm traveling, and he just stepped down from OnePlus. But then news just broke today, so it's dated December 9th, that he just raised $7 million for a new hardware company. And the numbers keep getting bigger. Estrid takes in 150 million, so it's about 15 million US. And Get Accepted raises 20 million, and Voy raises 160 million, and Inad raises about 170 million US. And so it's, again, another record level month. Running into the end of the year, but that's kind of common in December before everyone goes on holidays that they get these big deals done. And I'll show you the graphs in a minute that reflect that. And the big question is, how did 2020 compare to 2019? And you'll have the answer to that in about 3 minutes. If you keep watching. But other non-funding related news, semi-related, Trustly is on its way to the stock market, they say, and now valued at about 5 billion US, which puts it way into the unicorn category. So Trustly joins the unicorn club for 2020. And that puts Stockholm at 11. And there was another one who joined, Cinch joined the unicorn club for Stockholm this year. And other kind of ecosystem related news, Prismatic Sensor was acquired by GE Health, which is great for them. And Microsoft announcing investments to accelerate Sweden's digital transformation and plans to open a sustainable data center in, I think, Gävle, just north of Stockholm in 2021, which is great. You have the AWS last year announced their 2 big data centers, and now you got Microsoft doing their data centers, and Apple and Facebook and everybody. It seems like Sweden is becoming the default place for data centers in Northern Europe, which is great. Congrats to all the team involved in that. And then the EU announced they are going to have a European Investment Bank is going to do a special $150 million program to support AI companies. And in the quote, there you can see in the tweet, the potential of AI is enormous. The first line is. And yes, Teresa, you are right. It is enormous and more than you probably can imagine, as the next slide shows. Google's huge announcement just a couple days ago that AlphaFold from the DeepMind team in London announced that their one of their new AIs, the AlphaFold, makes a gigantic leap in solving protein structures, learning to predict and interpolate the 3D shapes of proteins, which was not expected to happen anytime soon. This is happening, decades sooner than expected. And it's the first, the really interesting thing about this is one of the first cases where AI is making a huge industry changing leap in a field that it wasn't expected to, even 5 years ago. And it has completely changed biological research, drug research, fundamentally changed the complete game. In the same way that it changed chess, perhaps, and chess will never be the same after the computers got involved, and now biology will never be the same now that AI has gotten involved. And this is where it gets really interesting: is what other fields that you wouldn't expect will AI be playing incredibly profound roles? We will see, because it's hard to say what it won't end up touching. And as I said in an email just, I think, yesterday morning to everybody, kind of related, China claims now that their quantum supercomputer is 10 billion times faster than Google's quantum computer, which itself is infinitely times faster than a normal supercomputer. And so I saw another headline that said that this was 100 trillion times faster than any supercomputer, this new Chinese quantum computer. And that's interesting in one sense, but especially when we think about AI, because AI now, in the case of AlphaFold can look at DNA, in essence, the sequence, and then project and interpolate what that will look like physically, which means what it will do, what impact it can have, and how, and then how proteins will work together, and almost like puzzle pieces, and by looking at the code. But there are 100,000 proteins in a single human cell, and there's only been a tiny fraction of proteins have been figured out in all of human history. And it would take an incredible amount of time to figure them all out, even using AlphaFold. But with quantum computers, that all could happen essentially tomorrow or in 40 seconds. So it will be really interesting to see the combination of these two technologies in 2021, because quantum is on schedule to really have major breakthroughs in 2021, 2022, and the main players, Amazon, IBM, Google, the Chinese players, are all projected to have their major breakthroughs in, it was in 2023, that's what they're scheduled for, but now that seems to have, because of this new Chinese announcement, might be sped up to 2021, 22. So Atomico did their annual report, which is the State of the European Tech. And in that report, here you have, I'm just going to share some of my favorite highlights, where you have this one here, the capital investments in Europe. So 2020 just barely beating out last year in all, which is great to consider that 2020 was a COVID year, and it didn't have the catastrophic effects that many thought it might have. And then this is an interesting one, looking at number of startups in each of the European countries, where you have Estonia just having an incredible number of startups. The orange line is the median, so then you have Portugal has less than might be expected. Sweden seems to have a fairly reasonable amount there. But then you notice, looking at the amounts they raise, Sweden per capita raises the most in all of Europe, at $900 per person, so per capita. And then this chart is looking at a different way to look at the data, both at the same time. As you go over to the right, you see number of startups per inhabitants. Far over to the right is Estonia, approaching 1,000 startups per million. And then up to the top is the ones who fund the most, and that dot way at the top, of course, is Sweden, and it should be even far higher off the top of that chart, because as you just saw, it's about 900, not 300 per capita. So Sweden certainly punching far above its weight. And then some other interesting slides that were in the report, of which there were hundreds. The median round size went up substantially for A rounds in 2020. And the capital invested for Sweden overall, as I said 3 minutes ago, here it is. 2021 is now officially a record year for Sweden, beating out last year, which was a record year. And I think it's even a little higher than the numbers that they have now, given the fundraisings that just came in the last couple of days that they didn't have access to. And then here's a couple of other kind of macroscopic trends that were really interesting to look at. The biggest changes on percentage of change of where emphasis is and where finance is going to. The kids sector was growing, and sports and telecom, music, and health going up a ton. Travel, of course, going way, way down, as you might expect with COVID, and event tech falling off a cliff, as you might expect. And then I really liked this one. This was asked of angel investors only. Which sectors are you most excited about? Doesn't mean that they've invested in them, but they're most excited about edtech and digital health and big data. Worth perhaps looking at if you're thinking of doing a startup, knowing which sectors angel investors are most excited about. And then this is where the money actually went in 2020. So the angels are interested in health, and you can see that there, but fintech is still where the bulk of the money goes, because Klarna raised a ton of money. Actually, Klarna was the single largest round in Europe in 2020. And in fact, the two largest rounds, fundraisings in all of 2020 were Klarna, and then just behind that was Northvolt. And Peter, the founder CEO of Northvolt, will be joining us in about 40 minutes. So stay tuned for that. What is your main motivation for investing in startups? Again, asking of angels, and the number one answer, half of them was to support, as it says, to support entrepreneurs and new businesses, half of angels say. And only 24% of them say financial returns, and 10% saying to learn new skills and whatnot. And I think that is kind of interesting to keep in mind if you're at the seed stage, earliest stages of planning your next startup and pitching, that 24% of angels say that, their main motive is financial returns, and, nearly half of them saying that it's to support new businesses and support entrepreneurs, which is interesting. Like they like the team and they like the idea and they want to see it happen, whether or not it necessarily brings a good return. I would hope that's the case. Share of this slide was particularly interesting for Swedes, because here's where we look at future angels and where they're coming from. The share of ex-operator angels by alumni. So this is what companies are the new angels coming from. And at the top is Skype, and Nicholas Zenström is a Swede. There's a bunch of Swedes that were at Skype. And then you have Just Eat, and then number 3 is Spotify, number 4 is King, both from Sweden. Delivery Heroes, founded by Swedes, and then you have Rovio, and then you have Klarna there as well. The 3 of the top 5 are Swedish based companies. So it's a good indication that a lot of the future angels will be coming out of Sweden, which is great. And then here was the overall landscape, as they do every year, 2016 to 2020. Looking at the fundraisings there, and Stockholm coming in at number 3, beating out Berlin. as it should, and Munich and Amsterdam and many others. Third only to London and Paris there, and not that far behind Paris actually. But Paris is having a breakout, and in part because Macron is so deeply committed to the startups, as are all of our partners: EY, Visa, Esri, Capole, EQT Ventures, Nasdaq, Nordea, Vinge, and the Swedish Energy Agency are all our fantastic partners. We're incredibly blessed to work with all of them, and they all we're inbound partners, as all of our partners are. And we're kind of oversubscribed for partners, and we look at them all very carefully and make sure that they have a very sincere interest in what they're doing. And I can tell you, because I meet with all of them regularly, they very much do have very sincere interest in startups, which is why we allow them to be partners. And if you want to reach out to any of them, you can do so through me personally. I'm happy to make personal introductions to them, as I do all the time. If you if you're doing anything in geodata, then you should talk with Esri for consulting of all kinds and help growing your company. EY is fantastic, even far beyond being one of the big accounting firms. Visa has tons of innovation tools for fintechs. EQT Ventures, Nasdaq, Nordea is a fantastic bank. Vinge is the big law firm that loves startups, and so on and so on. So that brings us to our predictions for 2021. Let's just plow right into it. Johannes, are you there?
I'm here.
You are.
Yeah, I am
Great.
here.
Merry Christmas.
Good to see you.
Good to see
Thank
you.
you. Good to see
Can
you.
you
Looking
hear me
fresh.
okay? I hear you. You've been in
Can
the
both
news
hear
a
you
little
and
bit.
see you.
Yeah, great to see you. And matter of fact, we did last New Year's together
We
at my
did.
place. Right when your major fundraising was announced, you had just closed it on Christmas Day, I remember, and then you got on a plane and flew down.
Yeah, we
And
closed it. We signed day before Christmas, so that was good timing.
right, and then the news
Yeah,
broke while you were on holiday over New
yeah,
Year's.
yeah. Then the news was leaked when I was at your place, so
Yes, and that was
I tried to
unfortunate. Your
relax,
holiday
but
got cut short because of that,
yeah,
essentially, because you had spent the last 3 days of your holiday on the phone doing interviews. But
yeah.
how's it
But
been
not a
going since
bad
then?
place to do interviews from,
Yeah,
your place.
yeah, that wasn't so bad. But it's
No.
been 2021's been quite an amazing year for you, perhaps more so than anybody with the pandemic. Can you say a quick word about that?
Yeah, no, this have obviously been a big accelerator to what we, obviously it's a sad backdrop, but one positive thing is that it's definitely accelerating adoption for digital healthcare, and we see there's actually a really big, huge shift from all our stakeholders. Where for patients, it's very obvious why you should use our kind of services instead of going to a GP practice and sitting in a waiting room and being sneezed at. From clinicians that by tradition have been rather conservative when it comes to adopting new technology, we have onboarded an awful lot of clinicians during this year, and high interest for changing the way that they're working. And also from the payer side, we mainly partner with some of the really large payers of healthcare in the world, with national healthcare services in the UK, the regions in Sweden, and so on. So also a big shift there in terms of mindset. It's just painfully obvious to people obvious that telemedicine and digital healthcare is a crucial part of the healthcare infrastructure moving forward. So that's a positive. We have been working very hard. We've been fighting hard to be as helpful as we possibly can, yeah, we're doing well.
Yeah, but what do you see when you look forward to 2021?
Well, I think in our industry, it's clear that the whole mega trend was obviously there long before the pandemic, but it's definitely accelerating things. I think that we have seen way more change the latest 8 months versus what we've seen the first 5 years of the history of our company. So yeah, I think that's it's clear to what's been very clear to ourselves for 5 years, that what we do is something important, is now rather obvious for the rest of the industry and people in general as well, and that's a great positive. And I think we're still very much in the in the beginning of the whole transition for moving a lot of healthcare interactions to digital channels.
What are going to be the big challenges for you next year? Because it seems like you're getting some challenge from, dare I say it, the media and other kind of, you're getting
Yeah,
gaining so much success so quickly that you're starting to get people, the typical hater phenomena that we get in America lately, where the tech press is getting really aggressive with the big breakout companies, and it
yeah,
seems like the Swedish tech press is starting to do the same thing.
yeah. No, it's not always. No, we are in the forefront of this change, obviously, and but it's a bit odd actually, because we are by now we're the largest company in our industry in Europe, and we are with own operations. We're in 5 markets, uh, but it's sometimes it's, to be honest, it's a bit annoying that we get that much sort of headwind in our core market and our home market in Sweden. Uh, you could wish for more sort of support on your current market. Also, given the fact that from there is an e-health vision in Sweden from the parliament, right? That we should be the leading nation within e-health in 2025, and yet we are not getting that much tailwind, so to say. But in general, yeah, things are definitely moving in the right direction now. But Swedish press, especially a few media outlets, maybe are not big fans of what we're doing, obviously.
Any other wishes for looking forward 2021? And it seems like, I don't know if you saw the slide I just did where the State of European report, they asked all the angel investors what areas they're most excited about, and by far the number one was medtech. Or was it education? Education and medtech both seem to be very high.
Well, it's two of the really big, important problems left to be solved with technology, right? So I would definitely buy into that. I think it's great that we see more and more innovation, more and more capital flowing into education and healthcare, and also more talent. Like we have hired more than 400 people during this year. We will continue to hire at great speed during next year. So I think that's a really positive. I think looking back 5 years ago, there was no industry around this really. Like we really had to knock on a lot of people's doors and try to convince people that what we do is valid and is of real value. And I think it's terrific that the mindset have changed a lot during those years.
Yeah, I saw that you're using the hub is like a hiring site, and I was working actually behind the scenes with your HR team. They have their hub site up, and they list all of the profiles they're hiring for. But what is on your wish list of people to hire for, or what's hard to find right now?
Oh, good question. I think we are in a fortunate position where we continue to attract a lot of great talent from across the globe. But we will continue to hire a lot in our R&D teams with tech and product. We always are looking for great clinicians, doctors, psychologists, nurses to join us in all our markets. But we are more or less hiring in all different functionalities across the company.
But are you making any effort to try and get people to move to Sweden, or are you just going to now do everything virtual?
It's a good question. I think that we do have a lot of people that are also have moved to Stockholm during the pandemic, even though we are more or less fully remote. I don't think it matters that much, to be honest. We are a European company. We have offices in 5 markets. I think it matters less and less if you're based in Stockholm.
Cool. Well, I fingers crossed for the 2021 that you continue to do well, even despite the headwinds, as you said. But you seem to have one of of all the companies in 2020. I think few were in such a fortunate position, perhaps.
Yeah, no, it's obviously it's an unfortunate position to be in a position where you could help out. I think it would be tricky to just sort of stand outside of the pandemic and not be in a position where you could help. And we have done a lot. We have we have done a lot of different things, and we have in the first wave of the pandemic, we did home monitoring for everyone that had tested positive for COVID-19 in the whole of England, for example. We have been offloading a lot of different sort of government-run channels as regular phone lines and stuff like that in France and the UK. And we have been fighting really hard. We have been releasing free versions of our tools that now any clinician could use to quickly shift to run more of their consultations digitally. And we've seen large uptake of that in pretty much all of our European markets. So yeah, hoping to get a bit of rest end of this year. Unfortunately, not at your island. But,
no, it's
maybe
still
2021.
they still got the borders crossed. Good to see you virtually, and hopefully we'll be hanging out on the paddle boards again soon. Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to that.
yeah, me too.
Cheers.
Kind of a good transition. I can't not do this transition. And it says my internet is unstable. Hopefully, everything's still going. But Peter, glad you could make it.
Hey,
And
Tyler.
on that segue of spending Christmas, we actually did spend Christmas together last year at my place. And then right as you left, Johannes came for New Year's, I remember.
There we
And
go.
shame that we can't do it again this year, but it's wonderful to see your face, because I remember when this whole pandemic was getting started, I was flying over from Thailand and staying in your guest room, and it was actually getting to a point where it's a little concerning, like maybe Tyler brought the virus from Thailand to Sweden. That was an actual real concern. I remember the last time I came over, and it was like, it might be, and then actually, no, you went on a ski trip somewhere and you were worried when you were coming back. And then everything kind of froze, went berserk. And here we are, 8 months later, still berserk. But you, like Cree, Northvolt had one of the most amazing years ever. I don't know if you heard me say just a few minutes ago, the two largest fundraisings in Europe were Klarna and Northvolt, and
Yeah.
Klarna just by a hair, actually.
Well, it's not actually true, because this was only our equity raise. We also raised $1.6 billion dollars in debt. So if you
True.
bring it on, it's 2.3 billion.
Yes.
So I think
Yes, it's
we
not even
kind of
close.
beat them with it.
It's not even close. Yes, you can claim. I think Sebastian will be okay with you claiming the fundraising crown for 2020. But give us a quick recap, if you would, and then I think more interestingly is the look forward for 2021 from your perspective.
Mm. We started the year with getting up and running with our factory in Västerås, where we have our R&D and industrialization, where we've invested now over 200 million euros in that facility. That is probably one of the most advanced in the world. But we had significant challenges, just like you mentioned, with the fact that COVID in the beginning of the year, we were having equipment installs, etc. from Asia. We needed experts, and we didn't want them to come. And then it totally turned, and then they didn't want to come to Europe when the
Right.
pandemic moved here. So we had to find a lot of ways around that, the two waves of pandemic have really put a lot of rigorous ways of working, specifically when you're working with construction sites and manufacturing. But we are right now up and running, and as part of the COVID, we are now in a really, really big challenge where there's so many customers now that wants to start development programs, and we just don't have the sufficient capacity. So the aim here for 2021 is to basically double again in our R&D recruitments and facilities development in order to support this. because just as Johannes was saying, the transition have just continuously being, even stronger by the COVID, and as a kind of post-COVID, the Green Deal in Europe, where Europe now is putting hundreds of billion euros into investments to re-energize Europe. Obviously, those investments is going towards new technology and new areas, the transformation into electrification of the car industry is part of that. What then have happened during the year, I don't know if you can see it behind me, but here is the live screen of
Yeah.
Skellefteå, where we're now completed a big part of the housing. We have now over 1,000 construction workers up in Skellefteå. We are building clean rooms as we speak. We are installing, and by end of next year we should be fully up and running. And in the second wave of COVID, this has been a challenge to maintain this. We've even had our own COVID testing team on site in order to make sure that we are maintaining an operation. We also surpassed our 1,000 employee here 2 weeks ago.
Wow!
And
Congrats.
as we look into next year, it looks like we will double that amount.
Wow!
Also.
What? Speaking of that, I know also we're getting you hooked up on the hub, the Danske Bank's kind of. It's this beautiful like social network for hiring. I'll talk with your admins about it. But what are kind of the main roles that you're hoping to, or what are some of the challenging ones? Or
I mean, we, if you take our R&D team, our cell development team in Västerås, for example, 90% of the people there have moved to Sweden, and it's a little bit better in different types of organization, but it is as this industry is growing like crazy, it's a really scarce commodity to find really skilled engineers, and it's a fight in Europe as there is so many factory projects going on or in the start. That we have the benefit of being a first mover, but the skills in this is really engineering around cell design, engineering around manufacturing, engineering around recycling. And also a lot around software engineering on manufacturing industry 4.0, etc. Is we're putting searchlights all over the world in order to find the right skills. We surpassed the 70 different nationalities also here.
wow!
Within the company
So
here a couple of weeks ago.
I imagine it's safe to assume you're the biggest importer of talent in Sweden in 2020, 2021?
We could very much be at least one of them. We have, yes,
That's
for
fantastic. Sure. And then I connected you with Mikkel Ribbenvik at my birthday party 2 years ago. He's still head of Migrations Verket. So if you need any help,
well, I mean they're very friendly to us.
Okay,
we've
good.
got kind of a speed lane there on work permits, which is very helpful.
Yeah, well, Sweden should be very thankful for all the, let alone the jobs you're creating, but the Europe should be thankful. I mean, you're really doing one of these planet-changing projects that are just hard to even get my head around how amazing it is. Any challenges other than outside of the recruitment side? What do you foresee as, assuming the vaccines work out? What do you foresee as your big challenges?
We have a tremendous amount of challenges. As any entrepreneur, as you're starting up, you're laying sleepless over all different things,
Ah,
things that isn't working, missing shipments,
yeah,
delays, etc.
yeah.
So I mean, it is a roller coaster. But if I should put some predictions on 2021, which is obviously a little bit from the filter of the field where I'm working on. I think the one thing that I think we will see more and more during 2021 is what I would call global transparency. I think it will be more and more scrutinized, basically the industry's role in the global climate, and different companies that claims to be sustainable
Mm,
will be asked to be much more transparent
mm,
by media and by customers. And I think this will drive a very good trend towards true sustainability, but
mm.
it will also be painful.
Sure.
But that's one thing that I do think we will see much more of
Good to hear.
in 2021. I do also think that energy, food tech, and med tech is going to get more and more of a kind of global capital allocation.
Mm-hmm.
This is the on behalf of, for example, oil and gas and other types of industries. So I think there will be much more funnels overall. I'm a little bit worried in what I would call the gap between reality and the financial market, where the financial market and Nasdaq and S&P 500, etc., is continuing like we're not having a
Right.
pandemic, and part of that I think is just the flow of capital plus the new money that is being created by central banks. But and this in conjunction with the fact that there is lesser investments in general by the industry. It's holding back investments. Unemployments are continuing rising overall. So there is a mismatch, and I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but somehow I think there needs to be some kind of correction during 2021 between these two worlds, and hopefully it's not going to be a crash, but some kind of an adjustment.
Mm,
And then I think there's going to be an overall trend where competence is becoming more and more important, and capital is becoming less important. I'm not saying that capital isn't important,
right.
needing all the amount of capitals that I need, but the valuation
Right.
between them, I think, is where competence is continuously is being upgraded, and capital to some extent being downgraded.
Mm, great. Thank you for putting those thoughts in my head and in everybody's heads. It's a good position to be looking from going into next year for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to have our manufacturing hell for sure.
Yes, I just got a sobering taste. Knowing you personally, I can read the subtleties of the amazing number of challenges you must be dealing with on a daily basis. When I was saying what a beautiful huge project that you're doing, but of course with that comes incredibly huge challenges, equally unimaginable. No
Well,
doubt.
I mean, it's self-chosen, but certain days you wonder.
Okay, go home and get some sleep.
Great seeing you.
You too,
Thanks.
man. Thanks. Hopefully, see you in person soon.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, Lisa.
Yes.
Good to see
Yes.
you.
Good to see you.
Yes, I think this is 3 years now, and as I've said every year, you give my favorite predictions every year. I have memories of hugging you after your predictions. You give me goosebumps. Um,
Well,
and
you're raising the expectations right
well,
now.
no, but in previous years, when you point things out, it feels like I've opened a door and stepped into this new future world waiting just over the horizon. And it's like you have an amazing ability to see this coming reality. So I that's why I say I get excited when we do these. Anyway, I know I'm talking it up too much. I just wanted to share what goes through my mind. Anyway, so I've been
Okay.
looking forward to this all day.
Yeah. Okay, great. Should I share my screen? Because
You
I
can.
want to do
You please do if you wish. Yeah.
that. So let me hope it works. And I say share, and if I do this, hopefully.
The
now you
last
see.
year's.
Yeah. So this was interesting because I went back, and I know each year what I feel is, I'm talking about what I think will happen and then what I hope will happen.
Right.
The preferable futures, remember?
Right.
And then I was reflecting on the things that I said last time.
Yeah.
So, I said, I think what will happen is that we will still hunt for clicks. I'm hoping that we will get more stories.
I remember.
I think we got more stories.
That happened, by the way.
Yeah, so that happened. And then I was saying, I'm fearing that we will get polarization, and I was hoping for partnerships. You know what? I've seen partnerships. I've seen so many companies coming together and, fixing things together. And even if, this is not true for every part of society, that
Right.
Partnerships happened,
Right.
but more partnership happened. So I think that was pretty interesting.
I think you are always a bit ahead of the curve of the average folks, and the Americans are always a touch behind. I still sense this will happen. It's just a matter of when. So yeah.
Yeah. And then I said, I fear that we are going to develop more seamless services that might get us even more, dependent on them. And then I was hoping that we would introduce friction. And I think that, with things like, Fridays for Future,
Yes.
with Black Lives Matter,
Yes.
I think we introduced friction.
Well, did you see the documentary about social networks?
Yes.
What
Yes.
was it? What was the name of it? It was all about this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that, I was hoping, and it happened.
Yeah.
And then I said,
well, the whistle. What I would say the beginnings of that is starting, because the people responsible for the seamlessness are now saying, wait a minute, pull the brakes. This is heading in where we don't want the train to go. And so that's why I say that the beginning, the critical pivot point has occurred, and now we're starting on this new trail of realization.
Yeah. And then I was saying, I think that the VC world is still going.
Hold on, though. Amazing that you saw that 12 months ago, because it's only in the last 3 weeks that that the alarm bell got rang. So anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that's why you allow me to come
I
back.
do. That's why I said I love these, because I feel like it's a crystal ball into the future. I love it.
So then I said, I think that VCs are still going to invest in many, many, many seats. And I was hoping that we would go for one mission. Now, because of obvious reasons, the pandemic, we are now seeing investments, turning 100% into one direction. But isn't that good? Like what I wanted to say is not because of a crisis, but basically there was a lot of crisis going on. I mean, the planet is urging for us to invest more focused and with more larger missions. And what I also said last year is that, I want us to take the huge questions and come together and say the things that feels like, no one can crack it, and invest in that. So that one, I'd like to keep it there kind of and say, that one happened, but still needs to continue to happen. Mm-hmm. Okay, the fifth one is the one in the center. So I said, can we, I was thinking we will have more screen. I was hoping no screens, meaning can we use technology to do interesting things in the background so that we as people can use our humanity to meet each other?
Yes.
Did that happen?
It's happening in a huge way. Here's why. The coolest startup that nobody's heard of yet is a lot of the most elite people at Apple are leaving to create their own startup. I'll get the name of it in a second. And it's essentially Martin from Narrative. When he had that camera on his shirt, he was 5 years ahead, because now the hardware is smart enough and the AI that didn't exist when Martin was doing it. And all of the things it can see, and it has visual learning of everything that's around you, and it knows what is around you, it knows who you're talking to and everything else. It knows your voice and everyone else you're talking to. And that you would now use this wearable camera with AI and no longer staring at your phone all the time. And you can talk to it. It has, Siri or Google Assistant. And you won't really need the screen so much anymore. And I'll get the website in a second.
This is exactly what I wanted to happen.
Yeah.
The only thing is, what did happen is that more screens multiplied for 2020. So we need to keep this one in the center for next year because of obvious reasons. We became even more focused on screens. Because this is now the channel where we meet. And I think that we even more need to have design for closeness and that startup and other companies. Please, please, please use whatever capability you have to do, what is it that machines should do? What is it that computers should do? What is it that, can happen in the background so that we as humans can do what we do best. And what we do best is critical thinking. We do, the non-linearity, the originality, the opportunity to match two weird things into something that computers cannot do. But we also do empathy. So, I'd like so I wanted to keep two from this one for 2021. So more screens, no screens for 2021. Many scenes to one mission, please. So keep them. And predictions for 2021. So now these are not going to be as, predictive, maybe, because, set it up. So what I was thinking about is, because you always ask me for design predictions, and I try not to be true to that. So in design, we have spent lots and lots and lots of time to work with customer journeys. So how can we make products and services more customer friendly? How can we, go do omni-channel experiences and bring them together and all of that? And how can we do, really bad experiences where Uber was, I think, fantastic to take, the key pain points and just turn them into moments of truth. So like that was fantastic. And I actually think we will continue to do more of that. But what I'm hoping is that we will do circular journeys. So we need to connect the dots. So we need to see not what what we predict the customer is going to do in our ecosystem, but what the customer is going to do in a holistic ecosystem. And I'd like to see us design circular journeys where our company is playing one part. And coming back to partnerships, can we see more companies coming together and collab a circular journey? So hinting a bit to Northvolt, I think they have an instrumental piece in it, but they cannot do everything on their own. And actually same with Kry, and so we need to now start thinking about these bigger journeys. And actually, one of the things that I'm working on currently will be launched next week is around this. Like, how can we help? And how can we use design as an accelerator to do these collabs? Because the challenges out there are so enormous, and the only way to solve it with speed is to do it together.
This is these big aha, new opening a door into a new world type, beautiful, visions that you consistently bring. Is the idea, because Northvolt's a great example. They are a silo of what they do, and they engage with their customer in a very narrow band. And then there's 50 other companies, 100 other companies that are also siloed in very different ways, in different disciplines and different skills, and they also touch with that same person in very direct but different ways. And why can't the companies combine silos, let their silos rub up against each other?
Exactly.
And engage with the customer in a multifaceted way rather than in 100 singular ways.
Yes.
Oh, that is
that's
amazing. And of course, again, I know you're right, because after multiple years of doing this and watch, but it'll become true in a way that isn't even possible to fully grasp today. And then when it does happen, you're like, that's how it manifests itself.
Yeah. So because this is the beauty, I'm predicting and hoping.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how, but I do know that we need to give something up to make,
Yeah. You can't white knuckle and try and keep your own personal monopoly on the relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So New Year's challenge for all of you is not what would you like to happen 2021, but what is it that you are actually going to take away to make something else happen. Okay, so we can chat about that on Twitter, maybe on New Year's Eve. I've never been invited to that famous
you have an open
one day.
You have an open invitation, actually.
So the next thing is what I do think we will continue to do, because it's really great. It's agile development, and we will continue to build our services like this. But if we're now building on the previous thing with the partnerships, we need to make sure that we design for big leaps. So we cannot figure out the like radical innovations if we build them incrementally. So even if agile is beautiful for some product development, if we want to go like totally radical, and the example here is a year ago we built the world's first AI-based tutor for calculus with a company. We had no business plan. We had zero plans. And this one is actually cannibalizing on their existing business model. So if we really think that we are going to do stuff that is radical, we need to stop doing small steps and do what I call provocatypes. So triggers.
What a great word!
Yeah,
that's an amazing word.
Provocations.
Yeah.
Provocatype.
A provocative prototype.
Exactly. So provocatypes, please do
what
them.
What a great word.
What they are is that they are manifestations of the future that you bring here today, and that's going to speed you up. So please do that.
Provocatype. That's fucking great.
So let's do that. And then my last one. So what I think we will continue to do is to hire AI specialists, and we need and you can say any engineer, machine learning kind of fantastic people here.
Yeah.
What I hope that we will do, and now for those of you who are running companies, I'm going to challenge you, not with the first one. So what I'm hoping is that you are going to hire ethical designers. Okay, that's a given. You need to hire people who could foresee what the unintended consequences are of the things that you are currently developing. But there are people in history who's been doing this for thousands of years. Why are we not hiring them? So I'd like you guys to hire a comedian. Who are the best people to be so true about what is relevant for the future? Comedians. That's why we laugh. Because it hurts because they're so right. So I want you guys to hire a comedian or a philosopher. I mean, philosophers have spent their whole life understanding things that, bring from history, from ethics, from empathy. Why don't we have a head of philosophy at Klarna? And why don't we, while we are doing it, why don't we hire a musician? Why don't we think about the people, again, who are really good in, changing our behaviors, connecting with us. How does Northvolt sound?
Mm.
If what we're talking about here is also not only the unintended consequences, but the intended consequences. So I just like us to, expand that recruiting thing you were talking about with some competencies that I think is desperately needed to diversify tech.
Mm.
Here you go.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And you know what? Here's a hint that you're right, is on this last point about the kind of combining and the AI element. And I read an article today. One of the most interesting fundraisings in a long time just happened the other day. Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia did a deal together. That's the two top most, kind of leading investors globally for the most part. And it's essentially a marketplace for AI and machine learning tools so that people don't have to recreate them all from scratch, and you put them in the marketplace and you do. And it's the beginnings of a collaboration across, in a sense. It's the recognition of the need for those kinds of things. So it's, again, just a hint that, of course, you're on the right track, that the best investors in the world are backing that sort of tool. But again, thank you for giving us this glimpse that we will look back on next year and reflect on just how it did manifest itself in a way that we couldn't quite imagine today. Because it never does. It never arrives exactly as it is expected. It comes in some bizarre twist of a way, right? That you just, but that's how it is. That's the fun of it.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just glad that this is now becoming an annual tradition, because more so that we look back in 5 and 10 years and be like, oh, wow, yeah. Because the 1 year,
when it's a commodity to build provocatypes, and when everyone has a chief philosopher and all of that,
right.
we will just laugh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks. Patrick, that's a good segue to you. There was a lot of AI there. So I want to dig in on your brain on the AI front. And I found a photo actually today I was going to use for your photo here as your placeholder, where it's in my deck actually, where at the AI kind of party job fair, actually, kind of back to Lisa's point a little bit, that we did in a year ago, September, which I have to say that I couldn't believe how well that went. That was so much fun, and I think one of the first of its kind. But man, the energy in that room was like the coolest nightclub in the world. It was like people were just buzzing, man. That was such a fun thing that we were able to do together. So I just wanted to reflect on that.
Thank you so much for collaborating on that. I think we filled the entire room with people,
packed.
so
yeah.
I mean, people couldn't move, and
yeah,
it was
and it's not a small room. This was the Stockholm Waterfront Congress. Yeah, it's not a small room. Yeah.
But it's like I couldn't believe that we would get so much buzz and traction around AI jobs.
Yeah. Well, it's the future, man. Like Lisa and I were hinting at there. It's like she brought it up in part, and also and I'm sure Jason Ball will get into that. It's like it seems more the relevance and the importance of the AI engineering types is becoming. It's not just something you put in your deck that it is AI. It's like it's becoming the integral. It's seeping its way into everything seemingly, and that AlphaFold announcement, it's if nothing else, I hope that really, of course, everyone in biology understands the deep intensity of that, and of course, people in the AI world do very well. But now I hope people, aunts and uncles will get a better grasp on, the role that this is going to play in our own lifetimes. Because before now, it was kind of like, for example, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. You hear a lot about it, but you don't really hear about why it's going to change. And crypto and Bitcoin is still waiting for its AlphaFold moment, I feel, right? But in this case, this AlphaFold moment really brings a practical reality to the whole thing. Of course, it already has. I mean, when you start typing your Gmail messages, you see it every day. It's getting better and better. But I mean, to see the science community kind of lose their minds collectively over what happened this week is very cool. But anyway, what do you see when you look forward?
Well, there are a lot of big trends. I mean, there is so much happening within the AI space, but I've boiled it down to three areas. And I think we talk about AI people and AI specialists, but I would rather say data specialists, and I will motivate why. I mean, this is something that has happened gradually, but I think we have now reached a point where it's safe to say that a big majority of the people within the AI space, working in the AI space across different industries, have come to the same realization that um, the so-called IP, intellectual property, when we work with AI, it's not related to the AI models, right? Not the data scientists and the machine learning people who have learned how to write models from scratch at school and so on. But people have realized that it's all within the data. And we've heard about this shit in, shit out, or when you speak publicly, maybe garbage in, garbage out thing. We've heard about that for a long time. But people really have started to understand that it doesn't matter who you bring onto your team, whatever professor or PhD or whatever. If you have bad data, you can't build good models. And we have seen a lot of things happening related to that. I mean, just a couple of years ago, the entire looking in academia, but also in industry, everyone talked about explainability of models, machine learning models. We need to explain and understand models, black box versus explainability. But now we start to talk about data transparency. Instead of like focusing on the model, like, can we understand the prediction? We're asking ourselves, what do we even put into the model we're trying to explain?
Right.
I mean, can you trust the data over time? Is it robust when you put things into production? Data always have issues. That's one thing we know for certain. Just 1 year ago, we have the Statistics Sweden, one of the most competent agencies in Sweden, or organizations overall, when it comes to collecting high quality data. And they did this, unemployment rate exaggeration, right? And that resulted in the central bank changing its opinion on the interest rate, and commercial banks following suit. I mean, this is very big consequences, and the GDP of Sweden was recalculated based on this mistake. And
that's a great point.
Entirely related to data quality,
right?
Purely. And that is the main reason for why you can't. I mean, we always say there is a big hype when it comes to AI, but there is very little hype when it comes to data, because no one is really talking about it until now.
Right. So if I could for a second, is in one sense, if you had to come up with a metaphor for people who don't deal with AI at all or data at all, is that it's almost like the chef versus the ingredients, where we spent so much focus on the chef, and what you're saying is like, you could be the greatest chef in the world, but if your ingredients are shit, it doesn't make any difference. It's like you can only make great stuff with, depending on what the ingredients are. It's the actual base of the equation is the ingredients, right?
I would agree to that to a large extent, but I've seen chefs being able to cook something up with poor ingredients. But in the data world, that's not possible, right?
Right.
It's a very good analogy. It makes your life a lot easier if you have good ingredients, at least.
Yeah.
But you can still cope with poor ingredients if you're a really good chef. But in the data world, it's totally shit in, shit out.
Right.
And I mean, you can also, I mean, maybe it's to Lisa's point, when it comes to the data, where you need ethical designers, comedians, philosophers, musicians, and whatnot. because that's really what where things are happening. When we talk about biased algorithms, a lot of it starts with the biased data. That's how the algorithm learns to be biased.
They
And
put
we
in the
always
wrong data sets essentially into the models.
non-representative,
Ah,
skewed, biased, and also, I mean, even so, I mean, what is the wrong data set?
right,
The thing with machine learning, which I define AI as in this case, I mean, that's what we usually mean synonymously, right? Um, I mean, we train algorithms on historical data because I mean, but there is an underlying assumption when we do that. We implicitly assume that the future and the reality that generates the new data will behave exactly as historically. Otherwise, it makes no sense for us to train machines on historical patterns and apply that for future decisions. We assume that there's a stability in the world, but
right.
we know that this never holds. Just take COVID as an example. Every
Oh my
algorithms
God, yeah.
customer behavior just got disrupted. Everything got, you need to retrain that. So we have a big wake up call when it comes to the data side.
Well,
It doesn't matter.
that's all you had to say was COVID, because you can't find two people who agree on anything about the data of COVID.
Yeah,
From
and just to take, I mean, we got a lot, everyone got disappointed on the AI community when it came to COVID. Why don't you just create some AI thing that solves the situation? But just think about the data that we have access to. I mean, every country define things differently. Who is, I mean, how many people are dying in each country? Who has COVID? I mean, that's totally inconsistent across regions in Sweden, across countries. I mean, you can't work with bad data. So
ah,
that's why we've seen a lot of problems to get things started on the AI side when it comes to that.
yeah. Okay. We've gone on too long already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just wrap up real quick?
Yeah, so that was just related to one of the predictions, but I think I will wrap up and summarize the other 2 points. I mean, first of all, data. We see a lot of things happening. People start to care about, transparency of the data and to make sure that data is good rather than just looking at the models. And when you have the good models, you can build or when you have the good data, sorry, you can build simpler models on top, because if you have the good ingredients, it doesn't take too much to create big things. And that relates to the other point when it comes to the more, we start to see a lot of broader adoption of AI technologies among companies outside the likes of Netflix, Google, Facebook, and so on, because connected to the COVID, we have seen a tremendous increase in digitalization efforts of companies, and that gives you a lot of data to work with. And if you just look at the job listings, you see a lot of data roles being recruited nowadays. So I think that that's a second big trend, that you see more companies leaving the proof of concept phases, and just everyday companies that we see in our everyday life will start to use AI technology. Yeah, that's the wrap up.
Cool. Thanks for that. I just had to have a chat there with Carl. Thank you for that, Patrick.
Thanks.
And hopefully we'll get to do something cool together in 2021.
Yeah,
I'll be
looking forward
pinging
to
you
that.
about it before long.
Yeah,
Thank you, my
thank you so
friend.
much. Bye.
Yeah, and thanks for that point. It is such a fascinating point about how the data around COVID is so what a complete cluster F it's been. That COVID alone has shown the world just how crazy data is, from all perspectives and all angles, and it's almost been nothing more. Every news interview is trying to figure out different perspectives of this data soup salad mess, and which explains why you haven't seen AI been able to do much with it. I guess it's crazy. Anyway, thanks, Patrick. Okay, Carl, are you there?
I am.
I'm so sorry, man. I know you got to run, so let's run through these. So
No worries. No
I'll paint
worries.
the I'll do the background. You like Lisa have done this now previous years,
Yeah.
and from more of a investment banker, merger acquisition, macroeconomic, and now getting much more engaged in direct investment as well. And you've been doing a damn good job of it. Congrats to everyone
Thanks.
on the team. I mean, you guys are well-deserved success. You're kicking ass and taking names, as we say. So I'm excited to see what you guys see when you guys look into 2021, because you guys are all about focusing on what's coming around the corner, so you can find where the value is.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll just share my screen. Hope that should work.
Yeah.
No, I mean we've been super lucky to have the pleasure to work with some outstanding entrepreneurs over the years. And as you mentioned, I mean, not only we're all about helping entrepreneurs, and we're there to help them build even greater technology businesses.
I love that. I mean, that's how it started. I mean,
It
is you guys were there to help founders who were selling their companies or needed to sell their companies, and it really grew from that. And now to add on all the extra professional services, you know, and the direct investing, everything you're doing, the IPO listings, you guys are growing into an incredible outfit.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, but it's all about the entrepreneurs that we get to work with, and I mean, whether it's advisory work where we do capital raisings, or you know, with Delivery Hero or Klarna, or if it's investments in Unity or Slack or Spotify. But yeah.
What an incredible
roster
roster there. That's it's hard to do that without laughing. I mean, that's quite a list.
Yeah, thanks. But anyway, so in terms of predictions, so I mean we've been doing this before.
Yeah.
And this is the 14th year running that we're doing this. We're setting out
and let me say as well, and a huge thank you that you do this, because you spend a lot of time leading up to this at the end of the year to share, and you're going to release the full report next week, and you're giving us a preview of the parts that are most relevant to this audience, which I can't thank you enough for that. So
yeah, no, correct. Yeah, so the full list and the full report will be released. I think it's on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, and there's a link. I mean, it's all on our website. But I picked out a few. I'll talk about today, sort of pandemic related to some extent. And I mean, just the back would overtake email, WeChat, WhatsApp, Slack. I think, and slow down in the growth of emails, but didn't really happen as well. So moving on. So looking at what we said about 2020, I think I'm not going to go into any detail, but we talked about the war in streaming, which would continue, you know, in a fierce way. I think, you know, we managed to get that one right. We've all seen all the tech giants releasing new services, new bundling packages, and so on and so forth. We talked a lot about AI and AI implementation in B2B software, the Apple Bionic chip and chip development and so on. I guess the one where we were not that successful is probably when it comes to database technology. We were expecting, we had high hopes for data lakes in 2020, but I think relational databases are still very much the main feature there. So with that, moving on to the three predictions for 21. So the first one is in education, or EdTech. And I think, you know, we talk a lot about the evolution in EdTech, and of course on the back of the pandemic. And I mean, since the pandemic hit, over 90% of all countries have implemented remote learning policies, but still some 500 million students are left out, mainly due to lack of policies, or lack of equipment. The World Economic Forum believes that the pandemic will lead to much larger scale and cross-industry coalition and collaborations to set sort of common educational goals. We all know Google Classroom, digital exam platforms, digital textbooks such as Cognity have all seen huge upticks during this pandemic, and in many ways it would have been very hard to cope education without them. this is already a huge industry, $80 billion by the end of 2019, close to, and the already high expectations for future growth have been revised upwards. Now looking at 18% annual growth between over the next 7 or so years. Still, this is only 5% of the global spending in education, and I think this is where we expect a rapid change, a dramatic change over the next couple of years. This is also, I think, one of the key reasons that we see so much VC money, as you can see on this picture, flowing into the industry. It's still a very fragmented market. 3,000 edtech businesses in Europe alone. Consolidation expected for sure. And I guess to round this one up, the pandemic has shown that many education systems were very stagnant before, and technology can really play an important role and provide lots of benefits. So we expect to see continued adoption of remote learning and general tech adoption in the classroom when the pandemic recedes. So coming back to what Johannes said earlier, but the new patient-doctor relationship, or the impact of telemedicine on healthcare. So, I mean, needless to say, telemedicine has been a key factor in the way we've managed this pandemic. And in many ways, services like Cree are bringing back the doctor house call. So I think, expectation of growth from many analysts is that telemedicine will grow 7-fold in the next 5 years. And I think there are lots of data to support these sort of bold estimates. I think globally, telemedicine usage increased 500% from February to March this year. I think Johannes said, went out and said that clinical consultations doubled in February. Karolinska has put out a lot of interesting data as well, showing lots of efficiency gains. So I think, one of the key consequences of this pandemic, we can expect a change, and a permanent change in the relationship between doctor and patient, and how we interact with much more technology to play an important role. AI, 5G adoption, of course, will become an important part of that as well. So expect rapid increase in enrollments for health systems that embrace telemedicine, and continued rapid growth for companies providing these easy-to-use platforms. And I think, just looking at the graph to the right, I mean, it's the very, very clear pattern. Last thing I'll talk about today will be future of work. So I mean, since the pandemic, working from home policies were implemented all over. By April, more than 30% of the US workforce was working remotely. Obviously, a huge change, and to the benefit and to the increased reliance on communication and collaboration software tools. BCG noticed in a survey, that companies saw productivity increase by 15 to 40%, primarily due to the use of tools such as Asana, or increased use of tools such as Asana, Slack, Teams, Zoom, and a number of others, which saw huge upticks. I mean, looking at the graph here, the orange one is the daily active users of Teams, which completely skyrocketed, and it added 12 million active daily users in 1 week in March.
Yeah.
Pretty insane.
Yeah.
So I mean, in many ways, and just to wrap the last one up, I mean, in many ways, the pandemic has forced us to really change the behavior, and what it proved was also that this adoption of technology was very, very successful, and the lasting change will be that employers will have to rethink the future of work setups. McKinsey said, 20% of workforce could work remotely 3 to 5 days a week, as effectively as they were working in the office before.
Wow.
And one thing we shouldn't forget, we talked a lot about millennials before as well, and as of 2020, and we talked a lot about how to recruit them, how to retain them, how to motivate them. As of the end of this year, they will make up 50% of the workforce. Remote work is here to stay, and the communication and collaboration platforms will play a very important role in the future sort of way of work.
Yeah. In some ways, it still feels like it's an early beginning of a. There's still so much opportunity for so many optimizations around that whole thing. Even I was watching something recently about the tools that we're using right now, even Zoom, are far from optimal in what they're being used for, which is like 8-hour days. People are using these tools, and they were never ever intended for those. So it'll be interesting to see how they evolve.
Not to mention the privacy update in the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah, not to mention that as well. Or routing through China. Or
Yeah.
All righty. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Tyler, for having me. And
Yeah.
Stay tuned for the rest of the predictions next
Cool.
week.
Yeah. And that's a great segue to Daniel, because Daniel is all about the design and products and the feel of these things, many of which you have used. Some of the most enjoyably used products that people love to use, like Pinterest and Coinbase, going back to our early chat about crypto. So welcome, Daniel. I'm glad you're able to join us here. And I know you're onto something new now of your own, which is an easy way to share money between friends, I guess, which is kind of
yes,
Carl's
that's right.
point,
So
one of these
I
new tools that even non-Swedes are starting to use as we go into a digital economy now, in part due to COVID. Yeah.
That's right. Thank you. So yeah, after Pinterest, I spent a bit of time at Coinbase, and the new thing is Paymobil, which is a global Venmo using stablecoin. For the Swedes out there, it's a global Swish using stablecoin.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
For Swedes,
it's
it's like taking Swish global.
yeah, money should not be, contained by borders either, right? Like,
Right.
email was pretty good for communication. I think we can do something similar for money.
Right.
It's still early days, but yeah, Paymobil is a super simple app. Crypto's just under the hood. You don't really need to know about it.
Yeah, but that you're touching on a great point about Johanna said at the beginning how medtech is one of the big problems that needs to be solved. But so is simply sending money to a friend in a different country. My God, it's still incredibly difficult, and that's I think you are perfectly positioned to be one of the people to take a crack at this because of your experience with Coinbase first, and I feel like Swedes are uniquely, from a design sense. I mean, you being quite one of the notable Swedes who have contributed greatly to Silicon Valley, products, but even unrenowned, even Swedes who aren't well known themselves, Swedes in general, I feel are really good at making really simple solutions. And that's really what's needed is in this case in transmitting money internationally in a very simple way, and you really have seemed to have done this. I looked at what you've cooked up, and that this really could be the beginning of something extremely ambitious. So
Yeah, I think that this kind of product is obvious, right? And just like with medtech, it's early. Most people haven't really realized it yet. But when you're in that bubble for a while, it sort of becomes obvious that it's going to happen, and then you just have to build it.
Right. Do
But
the work.
I agree with you as well that crypto has not yet had that kind of like aha moment where like, oh, this is what it's for.
Right.
But to me, it's pretty obvious. The killer use case for crypto is payments. Simple as that. People have been looking for sort of fancy things, but at the moment it's investment speculation. But the flipping point will come where people will just use it for payments, and that's what it's good for.
Yeah. Well, it's starting to be the case with countries under blockades from other countries. Like Iran needs to use crypto to trade with other countries because the U.S. won't let them do anything in dollars, and the global system's on dollars. And it feels like that hegemony monopoly is overdue to expire. I mean, as much as it scares me as an American to even think that, with a lot of my personal and Jason can relate, I'm sure. Even being in the UK as Americans, that is a very scary thought. And by the way, the dollar is like really dipping down this week. I don't know if you've noticed, and I'm watching it really carefully because as we print so much money, I'm going off on a big tangent here, but due to all this COVID money printing, like it's getting a bit scary, like what's going to happen with the dollar. And China wants to rip the rug right out from under the U.S. on having the dollar as the default currency, but they're doing a digital currency of their own. This digital, Chinese currency.
For those who are watching the currency space, it's an incredibly interesting time. Nothing much happens in a couple of 100 years, and then suddenly, we're at this moment where technology is fighting the old system, and we'll see what happens. But I think it's sort of inevitable. It's more about like how does it shake out? Who comes out on top?
Yeah.
Is it sort of the independent technology of Bitcoin where I'm also working, or is it more kind of government sponsored versions of it? But you asked me to make predictions about design.
Yes.
So I've left crypto a little bit to the side.
Yes.
So let me bring you up my. I heard it's dark in Sweden, so I made a very colorful slide.
That's part of the Swedish secret success is the designs are so outrageously colorful
Well, okay, so I made a simple slide, 3 things, and these are much closer to the ground, I think, than a lot of the other people that were very high level and super interesting longer term themes. But here, let me just jump straight into it. So your collaborative design tools, and I'm thinking primarily about Figma here, is gaining steam quickly. I've been using it for a couple of years already, so it's not necessarily new, but I think it's stretching from a small startup with 10 people to now the Silicon Valley big ones are adopting it sort of this year, and then I think next year we'll see it stretch into more traditional design business as well. But the interesting thing that enables is kind of prediction 2, which is you can design much better together. You can all be in the document together, just like you are in a Google Doc, right? You can write together. Now you can design together, and you can also do it in public. This is a very early trend, contrasting to the first one. So, for example, in the bottom right corner, I have a link to Pre-Brand, which is doing, they're designing the brand of startups and companies in public on Twitch. So, you can basically jump in there, have opinions and listen in how they're thinking about their whole brand, how their whole design.
That's fascinating.
That's enabled by something like Figma. And then to round it off, the third one is literally about design, where I think fun or like wild style is the new black, where like people have been, they've become pretty good at designing digital products. They're all kind of mostly the same in a way. Like you have your design system, you can borrow someone else's and get off to a good start, but you still need, the brand is intertwined in the product. So, expressing fun, expressing strong opinions is coming much more to the fore, I think.
Right. And you can see a hint of it at the bottom of the slide in the yellow, which with your own, that money payment app, where the fonts are not, they're kind of, like you said, fun. And they break out of the traditional boxes, so to speak, and they have more of a life to them.
Yeah, I think we've become comfortable with designing products now that we can actually play around a bit with the rules. We can break the rules. We can, express things more strongly. That's not just the technical part of the product. And the second example there is Cash by Cash App, which is a fashion brand that they launched this week. Again, like companies who have that strong design backbone and that brand, they can do all sorts of stuff with it. It's not just a product, and it all reinforces each other. These 3 examples are actually all happen to be fintech products. The last one is like a really out there automated money market on decentralized finance, which is nobody's running it. Basically, it's a contract on Ethereum, but you can interact with it, and someone went out on a limb and designed it like MS-DOS back in the day.
I
So
think
people are just having more fun.
I think you're exactly right, and it's funny because it hadn't occurred to me. It's one of those things like with Lisa where you see it far, far out on the horizon and you're just starting to feel it. But now that you mention it, I'm thinking of examples like the Andreessen Horowitz site they built around the social is coming back is like this explosion of kind of fun feeling and non-straight grid type lines that in your own example there where it says, send money to anyone. We had a limited library of fonts, like historically the quote unquote fun fonts, were Comic Sans and were tragically bad. And there's hopefully a whole new generation of actual beautiful non-boxy font families coming that will allow this kind of fun, expressive, emotive design.
Yeah, we have certainly reached sort of peak Helvetica-esque font,
peak Helvetica.
And
there you go.
And a certain style of illustrations, right? You can land on a startup website and they all look the same, but you have no idea what they're doing.
Great point.
By the way they look, right? There's no brand left. So we have to break out of it.
Daniel, this is a really good fucking point that you're making. And I will make a mental note to bring it up with Jason. Actually, we won't even wait. Jason, you're nodding your head on this. Are you sensing this in pitches that you're seeing?
Well, it's not that I'm sensing it in our pitches. If you just go up on our website, look at it, gr.capital, have a look.
Yes.
Like it is the most
very
off the wall VC webpage you're ever. It's great.
Yeah, right? Very on Sand Hill Road. Yeah.
Correct. And I'll tell you, there's an Easter egg all the way at the bottom. There's an actual panther that jumps out and goes grrr.
There you go. Fun with a capital F. Thank you, Daniel. Those are brilliant.
Thank you. Have a good one.
There's no doubt to me that you're right. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's brilliant. And the name of your app, just so people can check it and get the feel for it themselves.
It's Paymobile, and it's paymobile.co.
Cool. Alrighty. We'll have you back next year, and we'll reflect on these three. Thanks. So one last one before we get into you, Jason. Actually, another quick one. Are you there, Stefan? You still with us? There you are.
Yes, I am.
Awesome.
How's it going?
From Danske Bank and Fintech, as we saw, this is one of the biggest years ever for Fintech.
Yeah.
So I figure who better asked to, because I know you guys watch the Fintech space very, very closely as one of the big banks in the north. What predictions can you, based on what you're seeing, what sort of predictions do you have around Fintech for 2021?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, there's so much happening in that space, and it's really hard to sort of narrow down to your favorites. But really, what I'm seeing is that a lot of banks have been focusing on open banking for the past year, with the PSD2 obviously being regulated. I think for next year we will see sort of the next generation of open banking. So banks and fintechs really taking that opportunity and leverage on that, both from a collaboration side, but also finding new sort of revenue streams from that. So we really see that, and take a look at Orange Bank, for example. They started basically from scratch, and just within a few months they were fully operational using open banking and third-party providers. So I think that's super exciting to see where that's heading. Yeah. And then, as Daniel mentioned, instant cross-border payments. Also, I think it's. I mean, it's been way too slow for so long.
Right.
You could basically, the fastest way to send money has been to take it yourself and travel.
Yeah.
I really see stuff happening there. Also with the cryptocurrency, we have companies like Ripple and IBM, WorldWire doing great things on that space. Banks have been quite slow at adapting to that, but I see that happening as well during next year. So that's really interesting, because I think, especially in the business-to-business space, that will open a lot of new possibilities for companies doing businesses abroad.
For sure.
And then we have banking as a service. So as you know, we banks are being targeted from all sides. So many fintechs trying to take a stake from the banks, and we do see a lot of new players actually providing the banking solution.
Tons.
Yeah.
It's almost like
yeah.
the same way that apps are all trying to put in the little Snapchat stories. They're also trying to put in their own. Everyone's trying to be their own bank now, including Snapchat.
Everyone wants to provide their own card and that sort of thing. And we're seeing a lot of players in that space taking the opportunity to provide that. And basically now, anyone that has a large customer base could provide financial products. So from a traditional bank, you would have seen banks as your competitors, but now it's more of the big techs and larger companies that we really see as the main competitors.
But now it's even the social apps like Facebook and Snapchat and crazy things you never would have assumed, right?
Everyone is getting on, so it's really exciting, and we're really following that trend and trying to see how we can mainly leverage on that and see what we can do.
That's going to be interesting to watch, because then the governments get involved and the regulations get involved, and that's where things get wild. But I think that's where things shift back to the banks' power, because they have worked for hundreds of years within these regulatory environments, and the startups are not used to swimming in those very regulated waters.
No, and it costs a lot of money for the fintech starting out. Just from a legal perspective, it's super expensive to cope with. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think you are right. I think that is a safe and something to keep in mind. And it's funny, the guy right before you, in essence, has to, himself as a fintech. It's like they're coming out from everywhere. The biggest space in tech, as we saw in terms of investment, in that earlier slide on the data.
Exactly.
Yep. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. And that brings us to Mr. Ball. Thank you for hanging in there. And let's get you.
Hello, sir.
You're phoning it in from London?
Phoning in from London.
Uh-huh. And how do I make you?
It's very dark here. Very dark here as well.
Is that just that time of the year, I guess?
Well, it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. Yeah. I notice you're in shorts.
Yeah, and it's approaching 2 a.m. here. Yeah. Hence, I don't ever drink Coke, but only when I do the tech meetups. I have to do something to keep myself way. That's why I look 10 years older, because I'm like 8 hours past my bedtime.
I told you, let's do this mid-afternoon.
I know. I absolutely should shake up.
Daniel's over in San Francisco, right? I think he's in SF.
No, I think he's in Sweden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He said, I heard it's dark there, so.
Oh, yeah, he might be. So I got to figure, unpin video. So questions for you. I actually wrote them down.
Oh, gosh. You could have told me in advance.
Yeah. No, I like to keep them spontaneous. So here we go here.
I'm getting old. I can't think on my feet like
that's
I
all right.
used to be able to.
You'll be fine. What is the worst and best decision you've ever made professionally?
Wow. The best and the worst.
Yeah.
I have many worse ones though. Let's see. My favorite one that I like to tell when, and you know the story because you actually helped me with it.
Okay.
When I was running after Twitter's Series B, you were sitting at dinner with me. We were talking about Spotify. Jason Calacanis was helping out.
Mm-hmm.
I was chasing Twitter for Series B, 75 million valuation, worked on it for about a year. And Jack messaged me saying he's stepping down as CEO. And it was very sorry we didn't get there. The worst professional decision that I ever took was I didn't say, what are you doing next?
Right.
So not only did I miss Twitter, I missed being a seed investor in Square, which was right in our wheelhouse.
Mm.
So that
was the worst. Yeah.
Probably the worst. I've tried not to ever do that again.
Yeah.
Probably the best, and it's slightly relevant for this. So we were investors in Zoom Series A.
Not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, not bad. I'm on the investment committee. It wasn't my deal. And my colleague in San Francisco messages me and saying, hey, there's this video business that we want to do. And I'm sitting there going, there's a lot of video out there, right? We got Skype, we got WebEx, we got Cisco systems. Surely it's been done. He said, yeah, but these guys, they did WebEx and they know all the problems and they think that they can build a better product. And my answer was, do it. That was a 200x.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So and that is it one of those cases where, and you hear this a lot from people, like the big 200x's are the ones that you would never necessarily have guessed.
I look, not only would I not have guessed it was going to be that big, I mean, we clearly had access to great information on the company, and I had left the firm by the time Zoom IPO'd. But at IPO, I look at the valuation and I think, oh yeah, this is a fairly valued business. Like that's a good value for this company. And I could not have been any more wrong looking at 2020, right? Rocket straight up. And I think it's funny when Zoom's market cap actually passed Qualcomm's market cap. Right? We wrote the A check, or part of it. And for folks that don't know the history, I was at Qualcomm Ventures for 11 years. So, yeah.
That tells you something.
That's kind of funny. Well, it might tell you that things are a little overvalued, right? I haven't checked the PE lately, but it's in the hundreds.
So that leads to my next new favorite question.
Oh, gosh.
So, because you just revealed that, this huge breakout success wasn't the one that you knew for sure was going to be.
Never works that way.
Right. So that leads to, this, by the way, these are going to be my questions for every investor going forward. So these are not personal. Great. Okay. So my next question is, that being the case,
yeah,
are you a good investor? Why or why not?
Right. So I'm clearly terrible. I only have one personal unicorn in my stable. I did Monzo early enough. You have to be really smart to pick the seed and Series A stuff. I do growth, right? So it doesn't take a genius to figure out which companies are growing well. You show up and then you help them.
Totally different game, yeah.
It's a very different ball game. I mean, doing the really early stuff, it's hard, right? And not only is it hard, but you're in many cases you're writing a very large check, have a lot of conviction, and you don't really have a whole lot to go on, right?
Team, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not smart enough to do seed and Series A stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not good. Like look at the guys at Creandum, I mean, they'll go do Crandom and North Zone, Spotify. There you go. They did the Series A.
Yeah.
There it is. Like that was, and it was a big check too. It wasn't like a 2 million euro check. It was very large. I think A was 15, 16, 17 million. Right. I feel like that was pre-launch.
I feel like the Swedish investors have a good little game going, because they get to see how it plays in the local market long enough, kind of without people looking over their shoulder, to be able to get a confident read and bet on something a little bit later than most markets get to do that.
Yeah, it's conviction, right?
Yeah, but conviction with a little more signal.
Yeah, it's hard though. It's hard, right?
Yeah, no doubt it is. Yeah. So next favorite question I'll be asking everybody: if you weren't investing, what would you be doing?
Running a yoga studio.
Which is itself perhaps investing. I think that could turn into. Look at Soul Cycle. Yeah.
Look, I gave a talk at Slush a few years ago about taking care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit.
I was standing near the sound man when you were giving it.
Oh, you were great.
Yeah. I think we were there together that time.
Probably. So this kind of holistic life approach is I would definitely be doing a yoga studio and hopefully surfing somewhere very warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm investing, trying to help people grow businesses.
But of the investing journey that you've had, what have you been most proud of?
Is this one of your standard questions?
Yes, my new favorite standard questions.
What am I most proud of?
Yeah. Or most embarrassed by?
Well, I think I already told you my most embarrassing one.
But I mean, that's biggest mistake, not necessarily most embarrassing.
Blunder. I can tell you what it's not most proud of, but the one that I'm most bullish on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote an angel check into a company called Memphis Meats a few years ago.
Yeah, I brought him to Stockholm on the angel round.
Great.
At the Tech Fest.
Again, for folks that don't know the company, they do cellular agriculture, so
they really pioneered it. Yeah.
They're growing meat. Well, Mossa Meats is truly the pioneer, but I think Memphis Meats has done a great job. And I begged and pleaded for the CEO to let me invest, because I really believed in his mission and what he was trying to achieve. Right?
Yeah.
It's meat without murder, and there's huge environmental benefits to the technology, et cetera. And we can argue whether it's Franken meat or not, but it's potentially a transformative technology.
Yeah.
And so he let me into the round. And as a quid pro quo, I helped him with some introductions to some European VCs. Atomico wrote a check. And they closed the $160 million round earlier this year to start their pilot production facilities in the US.
Nice.
So that is my most proud moment is being birthed as we speak. It's currently scaling.
Because that was 3 years ago or so. Yeah.
I wrote the check in 2017.
Yeah.
So I'm very optimistic that those guys will make it. Not just from the investment side, just it's a company that's truly trying to change the world in many ways. So
I imagine that was one of the best pitches you ever seen. But what is in fact the best pitch and the worst pitch you've ever seen?
I don't remember pitches per se.
Not even the best and the worst?
No,
really,
because it's not necessarily just a pitch deck that you get, right?
No, I don't mean a deck. I mean a person pitching you. Like, do you have a distinctive memory of?
So I mean, there's a few, and these are all sad stories because I didn't really get into the companies. But I mean, I remember talking to Daniel Ek many times, and I was deeply, deeply, deeply impressed with that guy. he was really on top of his game. And when I asked him, hey, what's your exit, he kind of laughed at me. He goes, I'll never sell my company. I'm gonna IPO it. I was like, wow, okay. Could you please take my money?
Yeah.
Also Ilka over at Supercell. Again, it was amazing. I sat down with him before they launched Clash of Clans. And he said to me, oh, I think we'll do 10 million in revenue this year. And I was like, oh, okay. That was like in June, July. And then when I sat down with him again, after having been chasing him post Clash launch, sat down with him November at Slush. And he was like, yeah, we're doing 1 million a day right now.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. And let's see who else deeply impressed me as an entrepreneur. I'll stick with those two.
Okay. No memory of the worst pitch you've ever seen?
The worst. I always get rolled out for these pitch competitions.
Yeah.
Happens regularly.
Yeah.
And probably the worst one I saw was at an event in Vienna. And it was crickets.
Edible crickets, protein?
There were edible crickets.
I've seen this pitch.
Their math was all off, and their price, the protein per pound pricing
price per pound. Yeah.
You would have had to have eaten 50 bags of crickets a day. None of it.
Yeah.
None of it stacked
Cricket
up.
protein powder. Really interesting concept, but yeah.
This wasn't protein powder. These were little bitty. They were actual crickets that they were going to be selling it.
Oh, maybe the one I saw was powder.
Not powder. And I've seen things like insects, which is for animal food, etc.
Yeah.
No. This was genuinely air popped crickets. There was a popper that came with it.
I'm starting to see why it was the worst pitch. Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that one.
Yes. And it seems like the common characteristic of the best pitches is they were making a bunch of money while they were pitching you. No,
they weren't yet, right? I mean, Spotify had just
not
launched
yet.
when I sat down with Dan. They didn't have that many users.
Yeah.
Supercell, yes, they did have one top 10 title, but he was forecasting maybe we'll do 10 million second half of this year. Maybe he didn't know.
Right? Let alone in a week. Yeah.
Straight up. Yeah.
10 million a week. Okay. Good. Well, that brings us to I have two pitches for you tonight, which we'll see. This could be the best, the worst. Who knows? Who knows where these? And now,
can you remind me of the game rules, because you change it every time?
There's no rules on this.
Am I supposed to be mean?
The rules are we want to see what it's like to be in a pitch meeting with Jason Ball.
Oh, I see. Because originally, for the companies that I'm about to present, Tyler had asked me to destroy the presenter on purpose, slide by slide. So
make them cry.
The most obnoxious investor possible.
Yes.
And that's not actually how I am in real life.
True.
I usually just go, hey, the numbers are great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, in this case, they're not Swedes necessarily. It's Danish and Finnish, so there's not likely to be any tears. I think they can hold their own. And with that, let me hand it over to the first, Von Holmes. Are you there, guys? I can see you.
I'm here.
Okay, guys.
I guess you can hear me as well.
Yeah, you sound great. I will give you the screen, and you can share your screen if you want. Give me 1 second.
Yes, please. I'll do that.
Go right ahead.
I'm trying to do that, but I actually shared the wrong one. Well, how is that happening? Hold on. Why does it work when you want it to work? Hold on. Try again. So share the screen. Can't see anything. Here we go. Hold on. I'm getting there, just losing my mouse. Trying desperately to make this work.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting there. I think this is the one I want. Hold on. Yep.
There it is.
Right, we're getting there. Yeah,
You're there.
That's very good. That's very, very good. I think I have it, and then I'm have to hold
And
on.
for while you're just getting
here we are.
I saw this about 2 weeks ago, I guess, as part of a impact accelerator put together by Danske Bank and WeWork and one other partner I can't recall.
Rice, I think it was.
Who's that?
Rice, the Swedish Rice.
That's right,
Research
Rice. Yeah,
Institute of Sweden.
That's correct. Thank you for reminding me. And the whole batch of them was quite impressive, but this one, to me, most of all, the people in the chat room were just super impressed, myself included. So I thought I'd invite you guys to come share it with Jason and the audience, because I just thought this is just such a cool thing.
Thank you very much for that introduction as well, Tyler. Thank you. So should I kick it off?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll do that. All right. So this is Vaughan I'm going to present, and we say we are a super hack. And what we do, Vaughan supplies affordable homes to the world, 3D printed and sourced and built from upcycled waste plastic. And what we say, we dial in on the crisis of global affordable housing and the millions of tons of waste plastic created every year. So enter Vaughan, enter our company, and build the homes the world needs and print them with the waste plastic so far trashed, now a resource. And we also then say, make housing abundant and affordable and sustainable. So this is Vaughan. This is a super hack, the 3D printed monolithic one-piece structure. And this is actually my favorite slide. The X-ray view, where you can see what we actually do, the advanced grid and the Guride mesh, securing the insulation performance and the load-bearing capabilities of the structure. High performance is a key parameter of the Vaughan home, where we meet or overperform on the Danish building regulatory requirements. And maybe most importantly, we cut the carbon footprint of a house construction by 90% compared to conventional housing. And in the same process, basically clean up the world's plastic waste. A Vaughan home is built in modules, at the moment 20 square meter each, and you can configure your home as a one-unit tiny home or put multiple units together for a bigger home. And the design freedom is unmatched, we think, and we can print almost any pitch, form, and shape with walls heights up to 3.9 meters.
Okay, let's pause for 1 second, Morten.
All right.
Jason, what's going through your mind?
Yeah, I'm not muted. What's going through my mind? I love this, and I'm a surfer, so plastic. I don't like plastic, period. So I think it's an amazing product. But I'm thinking about the math behind it, production, margins, delivery, that kind of stuff.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I suppose it's a kind of Q&A session, and we can come into that. But it is a very profitable product. The business case is quite unique. I'll kind of touch on that as well down the road. So yeah, do I carry on?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay, good. So what we say also, a Vaughan home is a safe home. It's smart and it's equipped with the Vaughan Safe system, combining active fire prevention, alarms, and performance sensors, optimizing utility and safety for the occupants. The applications are plentiful, from student housing to sort of standalone ADU types, or service parts for office or temporary healthcare units, to high-density multi-story housing. They are plentiful, as mentioned. And the key words in what we do and what we want to make with these homes is make sustainable living and re-densify cities possible.
Hey, Morten, for what it's worth, yeah. I have a fully off-grid, solar-powered, self-sustaining, our own water supply, our own food supply, tropical resort in Thailand. I would love to add more units this way. Because
you can do that.
Yeah, I don't.
We can talk about that.
You probably heard me say that both Johannes from Cree and Peter from Northvolt have come for Christmas, and Jason Ball helped me with the pay my tax bill to get the whole resort finalized. In fact,
Yeah,
God bless
it's
you, sir. And so anyway, but I
yeah, but
no joke. I would love to add try these down there in any way possible. So
yeah,
besides
that would
that,
be
I want to
very.
get into kind of the negatives and like what Jason, I know where Jason's head is at, and every investor's head is at, is like, trying to poke the holes in this thing and
Sure.
find where the weaknesses are. Um, do you have any slides on that? I guess I would imagine not.
No, what I do have slides of, but basically, well, just jumping back one thing, talking
Sure.
about sort of resource, we're actually getting also inquiries from the US, a US contact, or we have on a Costa Rica holiday site. So basically, the same thing which you're talking about.
Yeah.
About sort of where the cracks, where does it hurt? We think actually we have sorted many of the issues in terms of the kind of challenges we met and the questions and the tough questions we got. One of them was on fire, as we also came up at the last demo day at the Stockholm event two weeks ago. And this is one of the first sort of questions we often hear: what about fire? Is this safe? And that's where we actually work with this kind of process, the sort of active fire institution, the standalone system inside the building. And then also we work with different kind of fillers and additives in the polymer mix, and also surface coatings, which basically make these homes more safe than any other home. We can make the plastic not burn. Is that what we want? Which is kind of impressive, we think.
And I think you mentioned this in the first slide, but different designs. How large of a space are you capable of actually making?
Great question.
One module at the moment. One module is 20 square meters, and it has this. You can say they're pretty high. So outside sort of dimension on the highest point is 3.9 meters. That's what we can print at the moment. In principle, at any length, which means when we come to how do we utilize the space inside, we talk into the tiny homes movement, you can say, on a modular basis, which means we have to think of concepts of how we can sort of super utilize the home. I actually have a slide we can jump on where you can see a little bit what I'm talking about. I'll take this one. Yeah, you see, that's the kind of the X-ray view, as I said. You have the bunk. What you see there is that's a 20 square meter space. The stairs goes up to a bunk bed because they have this wall height of 3.9 meters at the highest point. And then you have a bathroom sort of behind the stairs. This is, of course, a model of what we're doing. And what you see sort of left to or next to the door is a kitchen area. This is a 20 square meter kind of module. If you have two, you have 40 square meters. If you have three, you have 60 square meters, and so on. So basically, you can build them and put them together. And the end game is actually through our, which is not there, but the end game is through our configurator. You can see the home basically configuring your own home, and the sort of AI, as also was mentioned before, would help you doing that. Then you swipe your credit card, and the 3D printer enables you kind of start producing. That would be the end game of I think of what we're doing here. So, as I said, the utilization of space, I think, is really about thinking about home as a cubic meter measure rather than a square meter measure when we talk about tiny homes and the future of housing in general.
So your thinking really is very much from the tiny home perspective. Is that right?
It is, yeah.
Right. Okay.
It also goes from, if you look at it from an urban perspective, we can make this multi-story. At the moment, we make them one story. We can make them multi-story. If you look into sort of urban environments, we can actually improve the quality of homes plentiful by sort of accommodation as such by this. We can make them very affordable, and we can also make the quality of life a lot better. That's actually what happens. We see many of that was actually my next slide. Where are we? we got numerous of requests from people around the world for reurbanization, affordable housing projects, homeless homes projects, kiosks, even for that came from Kenya. Can we make this into tiny kiosks?
Yeah, but
Morton,
Morten,
sort of
if you think of the PR value, I mean, we're going upscale, upmarket, people who are paying to be at a sustainability resort that's off grid, who we don't allow plastic on the premises normally.
Yep.
But in this case, it would be incredibly well suited because this is this upscale clientele would want to pay for the a premium for this, not for lower premium use cases, so to speak. I mean, I love the fact that it can be used for developing. I mean, I'm in a developing country myself, but what I would love to see, and this is just my own dream for you and for this. I'm projecting my own dream onto you here. Is
go on.
A place like Bali that has such a huge problem with plastic in the water.
Yep.
And if you could somehow do an A to Z transformation of a huge problem into a new solution, that the people would go crazy for that.
Yep. I've actually done beach cleanup while I was in Canggu.
As a diver or as a on surfing kind of thing, and then collecting from the ocean.
Yeah. Canggu Beach in Bali is just covered in plastic now.
Yeah.
Kuta Beach,
that's a certain.
Seminyak, like the whole coast is just fucking plastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, that would be a surfer's dream, though, to know that some of the plastic that had been picked up off the beach was going into these homes.
And in fact, there's a couple of really ambitious plastic capturing technologies and projects and initiatives that I don't know what they are doing with that plastic, but of all the plastic that you could use, that could play really well into the story that this is ocean captured recycled plastic, now being rebuilt as luxury, sustainable, off-grid, bungalows, on near the beach where they was captured. But anyway,
it's interesting because you're actually talking down to one of the phases. What can we see happening? What could another end game be? It's actually imagine in the you probably didn't see that in the sort of comment section on YouTube. People talk about tokenization, talk about crypto. Imagine if you actually made a token, make a token value per plastic, kilo of plastic, per square meter cube, whatever plastic you collected, you add a value on the plastic, which actually means people have sort of true incentive of collecting the plastic. That was then plastic then collected at our kind of sort of collection stations. We then sort the plastic, clean it, whatever we have to do, we process it. And as you say, then we start building the homes. So you can actually kill more birds with one stone, so to speak. And that's what we really see we're doing, cleaning up the sort of environment locally. It's also at the same time reducing the CO2 footprint of conventional construction and supply homes for whoever live in that area.
Yeah.
And again, demand for homes, you say you can go up market, I should say, where you are, but demand for homes is actually equal regardless of where you are. Even rich countries like the US, because access to affordable homes is a thing. It's just a different thing than access to affordable homes in Asia or in Africa or in Europe. It is a thing. It's an issue.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up just the point that people would pay an absolute premium to experience staying in one of these as a there's a market for that of people who would pay double what they would pay to stay in a concrete box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it might be where you start. Take the Uber model, basically. You start sort of high market, high end, grow there, and then you kind of sort of move across verticals in the segment. We used to talk about, we have the sort of the segment is tiny homes, and then we have different kind of verticals we work with, which also will look different from sort of geography to geography. But I fully agree. I would love actually to carry on, basically, separate conversation.
Yeah.
Is that something we could work on? That would be amazing.
Yeah, I hope Jason's inspired enough to want to do that, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But anyway, I hope people watching will reach out the same way I reached out to you, the event that I saw, and the ball gets rolling because it's one of those wow kind of concepts that hopefully we'll get a chance.
Yeah, good. I would like when we do that actually present the team as well, which I think is pretty important to this. What we say, we have three-person founding team, and we kind of sort of brag about the how diverse we are, being sort of both wide in skills and also deep in crafts. And we have Anna Harvey, who's also on the line here, the other one. with
I had to mute her because she just wouldn't stop. So
yeah, exactly. So, but Anna Harvey being an Indian, we all Denmark based, but originally an Indian, an architect and sustainable engineer. And then we have Matus, who's watching somewhere, who's a Slovak. He's a structural engineering guy behind the team and also a 3D print expert. And then myself, I'm basically the only Dane here. Previous or an experience for nerd doing as having international background from chemicals, IT, and design. What to me is happening here, I'm actually moved from chemicals over design back to sort of material science and design at the same time. So kind of the circuit actually ending for me. I was kind of concluded here with kind of the personal journey I have had. I have a very strong sort of relationship and cooperation also with the Danish Technical University, DTU. Again, no Danes, a Chinese woman and an Icelandic guy being around there, and some very strong sort of industry partners as well. So we have actually sort of it's been possible for us to create these very strong partnerships and actually in creating and developing in what we are.
Okay, so Morten, cover your ears for a second because I'm going to ask my friend Jason Ball here a question that you're not going to want to hear. So, Jason, what would you like to see on the team next? What should their first hire be, or second or third hire?
Oh, sorry, my brain wasn't in that place at all. Yeah, I think one of the key things here, I mean, he's got the manufacturing and mechanical engineering. I mean, getting this thing produced in an economic way.
That's what I was thinking.
Paramount, right?
Just like the real businessy sense side of it, like the finding the right team member that has that.
I would imagine the manufacturing facilities are probably bespoke and probably quite pricey and probably difficult to run. And I know nothing about the space at all. That's just a guess.
I don't need that. Is not true actually. We have partners out there. We basically, how should I say without sort of disclosing too much of what we do in this private public space we're in. Basically, it is 3D printing, which basically is built by two issues. You have a robotic rig and you have an extruder. That's basically the two things put together. We're very fortunate. Our seed investors they come from the manufacturing side. You can't see them on the slide, but we do have very hands-on actual investors. There was a specific target, those who went out and pointed out, say, who do we need here? Who could be the arms and legs and brains helping us with the manufacturing side? And there are those we have among our sort of seed or pre-seed investors as well. We are building the site or the facility right now, and we will be sort of pushing the first sort of prototype out by March, April this year, and then basically go commercial, meeting and supplying on the first orders and letter of intent we had by late 21, late next year. Cool. That's what will happen. So I fully get your point. Who can these guys produce it? We can to a certain degree, and we definitely can now with that kind of investor expertise we got in from the space. That was very important for us to get that.
Okay,
so I think good spotted. Well, good point.
Yeah, I think we have the nuts and bolts of it. No pun intended. But timing wise, we got to jump onto Epic Food before.
Yeah, that's fine.
But
No problem.
I do hope to keep in touch about it. Really hopeful. It does have a sort of, Jason, do you not still, there's a similarity to Memphis Meats in a way where there's this interesting
Yeah, I mean, this
reimagination of what's possible.
I mean, what struck a chord with me is the impact aspect to it, and I'm sitting here going through my head of like, okay, what impact investors might be interested in knowing about this.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was having a thoughtful moment, looking out the
Right.
window.
Right.
Which investors?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be happy. Well, not even happy. It'll be very interesting interested to sort of pick your brains on that. Definitely.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, I think it's cool what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, just last slide before we have Matti on is I like basically this is really about unlearning homes, unlearn the new type of homes, the own homes. I just like to close on that. And yes, and you can take a picture of my contact here. I'll connect with you, Jason, anyways.
Yeah, please do.
All right, cool. Good show. I'll unshare now, and then Matti can go on. Bye for now. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Bye bye.
Alrighty, Marty.
Yep, all set here.
Go ahead as soon as you're ready.
Let's jump right in. I'll just share my screen, and we should have it. So,
yeah,
great to meet you, Jason, and hello, everybody. My name is Marty. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Epic Foods. Let's go back to the first slide. My own background, I'm a physicist. We built one startup that got sold to Facebook, and now we started building Epic Foods, which is a super solution using the plant-based proteins, just not the crickets, but the others, and cloud kitchens to build the plant-based takeaway brand. But to really understand it, let's meet Joe, our user, who already knows how he should eat to fix his health and the planet. But the problem is he has no cravings for green beans or oats or soy or any of that stuff. And neither do I, but Joe is willing to try. So off to the store he goes. In the supermarket, they are just mostly selling these plant-based ingredients, which he can't cook. It's like expecting a Chinese guy to make a good pizza for you. So you have to first have a complete meal to taste to understand it. Luckily,
careful. Don't make sure you don't say Japanese, because Japanese can make some damn good pizzas. But
there are always an exception. But
you'd be surprised. Yeah.
Maybe I have to give them a chance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I can tell you, the Swedes don't make the greatest Chinese food either. Just for the record.
I was living in Southeast Asia, and when I ordered a fruit salad there, they just basically shipped a bowl of vegetables. So it's often happens that these cuisines take a lot of time to bake, and so it is with the plant-based cuisine. Now for Epic and Joe, the section at the supermarkets is quite interesting. It's growing rapidly, and there Joe finds this no-meat takeaway brand. It's really winning solution in taste because it's made in a restaurant type of way, in empty kitchen, not in a factory, and it's available right there, so you don't even need the on-demand. And actually, since we switched to plant-based and a grocery store expansion model, we've been growing 500% per week, per year. And the good thing is that the repeat purchase pattern is there as well. So an average Joe buys 105% more next month than he bought last month. And how we scale from there.
Okay, no, you stop. Let's stop right there. And while Jason's shaking his head, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind, Jason?
Wow. Like just so much, to be frank. So I had a conversation this morning with a very prominent investor, and he was saying to me, how can we make stuff like this happen? Because we're investors in Deliveroo and Glovo, and they aren't always getting you the freshest, healthiest food. And he was like, hey, like, health is the problem. He's an impact investor. Like, how can we come up with a company to do effectively what you're presenting. So that's why I'm doing all the nodding.
Okay, can you share the name of the guy?
I can connect to you afterwards, but
Awesome.
I'm also categorizing in my head like who would fund this. I think that the key question that I have, because I'm very kind of pro plant-based diets, while I am an investor in Memphis Meats, which makes meat based on animal cells, one of the key problems that I have with a lot of plant-based protein is it's junk food masquerading as health food, right?
Yeah.
Where because it's been overly processed
Or
in order
sauces,
to get to yeah. So that's really question number 2 is like, is it actually healthy what you're making?
It looks like quinoa in the photos. Yeah.
Very blunt.
Great one. We've taken this approach that we take the traditional non-junk foods, the household foods, and just switch the meat component there to be plant-based. So you are looking at the coconut curry or spicy ragu or noodle bowls, and we put a lot of effort to get the macros right, to basically read all the health science stuff behind it. I have a few more qualifying slides on the team part, which make you see that we
go
are
ahead.
not. So,
by the way, congrats on that. That's a beautiful slide there.
Thanks. And actually, it would be much more if COVID would not have postponed some of our launches. So here we are today. Of course, the next thing is how do you scale production, especially when people thought that food is really capex heavy, but hell no, we are all living in a circular economy, which for us means we are reusing the empty workplace kitchen or industrial kitchens with our own software and staff. And that leaves us a healthy 30% early margins, aiming to get more than 50% out from those places with the slightly premium pricing we have. The second part is our go-to-market. Like many others, we also started with home deliveries. That was slightly shitty economies for us, so we expanded to office deliveries. Didn't work when the COVID came, but we got lucky. Last year, 2 supermarket owners approached us and said that they would really like to sell this stuff on the shelves. And now we are at 128 supermarkets, which are on average returning 5 times our investments into CAC. So we could hire more staff there. The team to US, Mika has been buying and selling Finnair airline kitchens globally with his previous employees. Stina is the editor-in-chief in Cosmopolitan Media to understand the trends. And then we have a bunch of kitchen people to understand the French and vegan kitchen. So where we are now, we feel that we have the product market fit with the retention, and then the scaling engine with the CAC LTV ratios. We are just seeking 1 million euros to show in the next 5 markets that we can actually generate the interesting margins to grow to Europe and beyond. And we believe that the company, us, when we have the right message and the product positioning with the right logistic solution to reach those shows, we will get basically all the shows and probably some Jessicas too. So this is where we are aiming. Thanks a lot.
So what are your thoughts, Jason?
Can we go back to the team slide for a second? So one of my key questions there is, who is coming up with your menu? Who's coming up with the recipes? Number 1. And then number 2, are you working directly with the farmers, from kind of the farm to fork situation?
So to your first question, menu is mostly in the hands of Stina, who has an ex-athlete background, so she's really cautious about the health aspects and micros and macros. and then Tia, who is basically the hardcore vegan chef. And then we have 2 other people who basically make sure, who are like Joe, who make sure that it's for the average Joe to eat. So basically, that's the menu development. Then the farm to fork side. So we are still quite early. So we are using some of the wholesalers. We just have 1/2 chef working with the suppliers. So that will basically be going forward the situation that we'd like to go there more.
All right. Okay. You know, because I've talked to 1 or 2 companies in the food space, and they're actually trying to work very closely with local farmers to adapt the menu based on what's coming out of the ground to make it very seasonal, very fresh, etc. Just from the health perspective.
Yeah.
That's all.
One thing that I learned scaling our previous kind of cloud kitchen model, we used to have an inventory of close to 500 food items. Now we are just scaling an inventory which is building on 60 ingredients, and it's totally different ball game. And we do change 1 menu item kind of for every season, but it's not as complex operation anymore, because that has been really difficult to scale to all of these Deliveroo editions and kind of subscription models. So
I'm a customer of a company in the UK called Mindful Chef, and it's the meal kits.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've really noticed is that their actual ingredient list is fairly limited, even though it could be an Asian meal or it could be an Italian meal. The actual ingredients in a box week after week after week is fairly consistent. And I realized, okay, they've condensed down the recipes to make it very manageable from an SKU perspective.
I think that was one of the key components that we also had to solve before really starting to scale. Early days, the operational complexity was quite a burden for us.
And then the other question that I would, or questions are that I would be interested in knowing are around your cohorts, repeat rates. You know, how many times a week does someone buy your product? How often do they come back? Retention, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I would be happy to jump on those on a separate call.
Perfect answer.
Yeah, that's fine. But Tyler wants to know, like, what are you thinking, Jason? Like that's the next. That's the next question.
Cool.
But you answered it.
Very happy to talk separately. Yes.
Okay, great.
Well, I will wish the best for both of you, Marty and Morten, and your teams. And let me know how the meetings with Jason go, and then hopefully the ball keeps rolling. But you're both doing really cool stuff, and thank you for joining and sharing what you're doing.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah.
And
thank you very much, both of you.
Yeah, and to everybody who came on and gave predictions today, huge thanks to Northvolt and Cree and Johannes and Peter and Doberman, Melissa, and everybody from Danske Bank and everywhere. It was a long one, but we got there in the end, and I'm glad you seem to like both of them this time, Jason. So anyway, hopefully we'll get to see each other do this again in person in Stockholm or wherever, maybe even Thailand. Who the hell knows? I'm more excited to get back to Stockholm myself. Actually, I've had enough Thailand. So I think everyone wants to get out of wherever they are at the moment. Go somewhere. Anyway,
these panels on Zoom, wow, they're hard, right?
Yeah. Anyway,
everybody else is at home, like having popcorn, listening to us talk, and like we're focused on. I've got multiple screens going on, like a chat over here. Like, oh, it's exhausting.
Well,
we
make do. Jason, before we go, so quick, you could end it on this. Any predictions you have for 2021?
I thought you might ask me that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a few. Number one, I'm very, very bullish on crypto. It's funny that you had some guests in the space, by Bitcoin folks. Number two, space. I think space is big, and nobody's talking about that. Virgin Galactic has a test flight coming up next week. So that's another area that I think is going to start to look pretty interesting. And finally, as been alluded to, the future of work. I'm doing an angel deal right now with an entrepreneur that I funded before, and he's building a type of workspace that plugs into the Zoom APIs. So again, as you were saying, like Zoom was not built for this. It's very difficult to use. You've hacked together a system to be on YouTube, etc. But for example, running a board meeting in Zoom is fairly complicated. You need agenda and documentation, etc. So this particular company is building a workspace to manage those types of things. So those are my three key areas for 2021.
Cool. Kind
Bitcoin,
of on
space, and workplace.
On that point of future, I'm going to show you a photo on my phone I took today. Check this out. Kind of on future of work. I'll zoom in on my screen so people can see. This is can you guess what that is?
It's like a restaurant.
It's a meeting in a Starbucks. Starbucks has built a room that people can book for 3 hours. For all you have to do is each person has to buy a coffee, essentially. And this seems like I realized maybe not only Starbucks and cafes, but all kinds of places might start facilitating the ability for people to meet and the people in that meeting were doing with other people on the TV screen. But they were built a little Zoom room, for lack of a better word. And I can imagine how Zoom rooms might become a very ubiquitous thing.
Well, I definitely think that it's going to become more, work is going to become more distributed, right? We're not going to all be in the office 5 days a week anymore. I think those days have gone. Spending 2 days at home, that's great, but the other days, like you do need to see people face to face, right?
Yeah.
Like being at your event in person. Like there is no comparison to this, because my view is 4 boxes and I can look online and see how many people are watching. But when we're sitting there on stage, right, you look out and you see all the folks in the audience, and I can ask a question. I can take a quick poll. Hey, how many of you have had plant-based food this week?
Right. And
what do you think about? Right?
God damn, and you're touching on what is actually the magic of this event when we do it live, is because it's a very audience interactive type conversation generally.
And I look out and it's it's standing room only.
Yeah.
It's so there are a lot of things that you do miss. Being online, but you're sitting in Thailand, I'm in London, and you guys are up in Scandinavia. So that's actually quite cool as well.
Yeah, there is a coolness to it. Well, it's cool
anyway,
that we
thank you very much for the invite, as always.
Yeah, as always. But glad we got. I just wanted to see your face, anyways. We were overdue for a catch up, and thank you, and thank you to all of our partners who helped make this possible. And that's it, everybody. We will see you next time. Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye. Cheers.